tarde. Y vamos a empezar con Rob Davies, que ya creo que no necesita presentación porque esta mañana lo hemos visto. Y su comunicación se llama Desarrollo de nuevos modelos colaborativos a través de la red de buenas prácticas Europeana Awares, puesta en práctica de Europeana en las bibliotecas públicas europeas.
Good afternoon. First of all, I'd like to begin by apologizing for standing up to speak to you twice in one day. It's more than should be expected of you, but I will be as brief as I can. What I want to talk about a little bit is some work we are doing in the Europeana Awareness Best Practice Network to try to set partnership between Europeana and public libraries in a slightly more practical context. And tomorrow we will have a workshop for the first members of the Europeana Awareness Public Libraries Network. People have come from all around Europe to be here for that workshop. So this is about some first steps in implementing Europeana in Europe's public libraries. Okay, so I don't want to go over once again the excellent debate that we heard yesterday and has been referred to several times since. I think we all accept that there are big challenges for public libraries. We're at a kind of turning point where the speed at which and the extent to which and the way in which public libraries go digital seems to be absolutely critical to their future. It's a kind of, perhaps, an existential question. So very briefly, we're seeing an erosion of demand for the traditional print-based core services. It seems no longer guaranteed, at least to me, that there will be a supply of the material from these print-based sources, let's say in 10 years from now. Some kind of new service mix is needed if public libraries are to survive and be successful. The kinds of services they supply will be different in different places, different parts of the world, different countries. Right now I'm hearing two theories about what public libraries should do to give themselves a strong position in society. The first, which is kind of coming out of the discussion that the Gates Foundation, amongst others, are promoting, is that public libraries should be about supporting development in the third world, should be about social inclusion in the UK, about information that helps people's life chances, even their survival, and that this is where public libraries should focus their efforts. But this kind of leaves the whole thing that we're here to discuss, which is the public libraries have had a strong traditional role. Almost the core of their being is in leisure, in culture, in learning, and the relationship between these things. And it seems to me that if public libraries are to get sustainable funding from the public sector, they need to be broad enough to do all of these things. One thing is for sure, that engagement with digital content is absolutely paramount. It's something that we must now try to bring about, which raises the question, what about Europeana? What's the relationship with Europeana and public libraries that we've been discussing today? I'd like first of all to refer to Europeana's strategic plan for 2011-2015 and the four areas of activity that the strategic plan points to. One is aggregate, facilitate, distribute and engage. I'll come back to that. Europeana Awareness, this best practice network which is supporting the partnership with public libraries, has some particular target groups. It's trying to raise the profile of Europeana, make it more known, to reach as many users as possible, and also the creative industries and policymakers and so on. And there was a whole string of country-based PR campaigns, public relations campaigns going on over the next 3 years to try to raise the profile of Europeana. The one I haven't mentioned is cultural heritage professionals. So Europeana Awareness is targeting public librarians and other cultural heritage professionals, and that's the substance of what I'm about to talk about. If I can make it, okay. So this is a two-way thing. Going back to that strategic plan, the first one was aggregation, and I think we've begun to see that public libraries have demonstrated that they can make a contribution to this strategic goal of Europeana through things like Europeana Local. There's plenty of content from public libraries going into the aggregations, the ecosystem of Europeana. Awareness is pursuing two other of those strands. Let me go back to the strategic plan there. You see, aggregation is the top one: facilitate, distribute, engage. I think that awareness is also pursuing distribute and engage as goals for Europeana. And libraries are already one of the main cultural partners, clearly, for Europeana. I think the argument here is that public libraries can be a key partner in these tasks of distributing and engaging. Therefore, under Europeana Awareness, Work Package 3, to use Commission speak, is called Developing New Partnerships, and the task of this work package is to work through a relationship, first with public libraries, then with local archives, then with broadcasters and reusers, to try to raise awareness and to provide a context for partnership between Europeana and these various sectors. So what does Europeana actually have to offer public libraries? This is a good question and the subject of tomorrow's workshop, I think, because it's not a question that can only be answered by Europeana, it's a question that must also be answered by people from the public libraries community. There are some obvious candidates. One is that there's all this content, 24 million metadata records linked to digital content, last time I heard, or something like this. And much of this is openly available on the Creative Commons Zero license, which means, you know, here's a huge amount of quantity. Can public libraries engage with this quantity one way or the other, make use of it, channel it for their users? Good question. Through a process which I'll describe in a moment, we have begun to work on this over the last 6-8 months, and we have identified a number of tools, services and activities which it seems possible public libraries might like to enable them to engage with Europeana content. We'll be going through these in much more detail at tomorrow's workshop, so I'll just run through them very briefly now. The first is a Europeana search widget for public libraries. A widget is some piece of software that you can embed on your website, so this would enable users of public libraries through public library websites to search Europeana, maybe alongside other content. We've heard a couple of references today to the Europeana API. This is really for people, for developers, if you like, or for creators, people who are smart enough to be able to use an API. So this is one possibility. We've also heard about the need to enrich and improve the quality of metadata, and John referred to crowdsourcing as one way to tackle this rather large problem. So perhaps one thing that Europeana could do with public libraries is provide tools which support tagging and geocoding of metadata so that people can find the content more easily. Digital storytelling, a digital storytelling platform is one of the things that's being developed in Europeana Awareness. And this is a possible candidate for use in a public library context. So people come along, create stories about their lives, use Europeana content in this process. And we also heard about publishing to Wikimedia and the possibility of tools to enable that. So there's a whole string of possible services which could be developed and which we're talking about developing by Europeana for use by public libraries or in public library contexts. And as I will say in a moment, we've been looking at requirements for this, and in tomorrow's workshop we would really, and indeed today, we'd really like to get some feedback from the public library sector on which of these looks like a useful thing to do, how they could be modified, how they could be developed and improved to do something that public libraries want to do. The other area is another thing which has already been discussed today, will also be a subject of tomorrow's workshop. It's public libraries as community collection points. This seems to be very promising territory in an era in which public libraries may be more engaged with events than in the past, and less engaged perhaps with their collections, more with events than collections. And it doesn't have to be only these two themes. There may be many local, international, national themes that public libraries could be active in engaging with their communities to collect the memorabilia and other content, other cultural content that people have. So this is another thing which we'll explore tomorrow, as I say, but this idea of public libraries as community collection points seems to us to be a very promising one. So what's involved in all this? I can tell you with the work we've done since Europeana Awareness started in January. We held 2 workshops, one here in Madrid, one here in this country in Madrid, not here in Burgos, one in The Hague in the Netherlands, and actually the year for that should be 2012, not 2011. As a result of these 2 workshops, we have produced, in conjunction with a group of core public libraries who are partners in Europeana Awareness, and together with Europeana itself, a set of requirements for these tools that I described to you in the last slide. The requirements are published. If you want to read these requirements, they're on this URL. It may be of interest to you to understand how we arrived at the thinking we have so far arrived at about how these services could be implemented, these Europeana services could be implemented in public libraries. Tomorrow's workshop, therefore, is terribly important to us because it's the first time that we will really be able to put these ideas to a group of public libraries who haven't been involved in the creation of these requirements to get their feedback. So, as I say, this workshop is intended for the first group of public libraries who are going to eventually to form part of a network of 100 Europeana Awareness public libraries. They will act as a network for the 3 years of the project. So tomorrow's workshop is very important to us from a feedback point of view. We have about 20 or 30 libraries represented, I think, at the workshop have come from all over Europe tomorrow. There is a little bit of space. I think we've got a room which fits 50 people. Maybe we've got about 35 in there. So if people are not going on tours of Burgos or libraries of Burgos and are still in town tomorrow, I think we could probably fit in a few more. If you could just let me know if you want to come, in case the demand is overwhelming, then we can probably fit in some more. As I'd invited this morning, we can probably fit in some more people. Once we've firmed up these requirements, that the tools and services will be produced over the next few months, and then they will be tested and validated in the libraries, the public libraries which are partners in Europeana Awareness. We have about 6 public library authorities who are partners in Europeana Awareness. They will implement and carry out testing on these tools. At the same time, over the next few months, we want to identify some public libraries who would like to volunteer to become community collection points in the context of the 2 themes that we've been talking about, 1914 to 1918 and 1989, from all around Europe. So I think, as Ad said, public libraries we do see as a very important participant in this idea of community collection of digital content. Once they've been tested, these services I referred to, we will extend them to the whole 100 library pilot network in 2013 and 14. There is plans for a second conference in Greece in 2013 in connection with the Future Library project that Dimitris talked about yesterday. So this will be an opportunity to see how things are going and to ask people whether this stuff is working for them, is anybody using it. This will be a prelude to a full evaluation in 2014. And we hope that this will lead to a 2-way relationship, which results in the continuous development and improvement of Europeana services for public libraries and their users. For this to be the case, we need to get feedback from public libraries. We have tried to be reasonably systematic in developing these requirements, but we don't know exactly whether these are the kinds of things that public libraries can make use of, whether there are better things, whether there are improvements that could be made, which would result in an engagement with Europeana content. And that's what we're out to do. So I think that's it. Yes, thank you very much.
Gracias.